What's going on YouTube? Robo Sushi here with a pre-starter deck BT6 deck profile for Gabumon Bond of Friendship. This has easily been one of my most anticipated decks to play. It's been super fun, super consistent, really aggressive, takes games out of nowhere. When I'm going to go through the list and I'll go through some changes that can be made. We get the starter decks at time of recording in 2 days. It is the December the 8th right now. My locals should get them on the 10th, so that hopefully is the same for the rest of you guys. If the delays are here, that's why I'm going to go over this, because I know a few places in the nearby area aren't going to get their starter decks anytime soon, unfortunately. So this is to help some of the people that have to wait for starter decks even longer than we've already had to wait. So, well, let's jump into the deck profile. First off, we're going to start with probably the best baby in my opinion, Gabumon for blue. Gabumon helps you draw extra cards. Not all the time is he going to proc, because not everybody's going to not have things without stacks. But there are a lot of decks this format. Security Control, you're going to get an extra or a free draw for that. Even things like Three Musketeers, they're hard playing Beals. Other Rookie Rush versions of just Rookie Rush in general, or the traditional kind of Rookie Rush version of Gabumon like this deck is, and Agumon Rookie Rush, which is another thing. So there are going to be a few times where this comes up, this format more than others, but I still think it's the most consistent. If you wanted to run a fourth, I would personally recommend waiting until the starter decks come out and we get that new Demi-Vmon that gives us plus 1,000 if we have 8 or more cards in hand, which kind of can come up, but not as much with this deck. But next, we'll go on to the rookies. We have 4 copies of BT6 Gabumon, 4 copies of Draw Gabumon, 3 copies of Dash Pack Gabumon, and 2 copies of Gabumon from the starter deck. I'll go over what this card does in a second, because right now it doesn't matter. First, Gabumon, of course, is probably the best one. It's BT6 Gabumon. When you play a mat, you get to gain 1 memory. This doesn't come up very often. What you really like is the inheritable, which is once per turn when this Digimon has Gabumon a Bond of Friendship in its name, you get to unsuspend it after when it's attacking. This basically gives your Bond of Friendship, with his already other ability if you have a Tamer, 3 swings effectively, so you can easily Digivolve on top of this, clear a board. This is what you want to have back in Raising. You want to have your Gabumon. You want to kind of chill with this if you can wait for it, unless you have another one in your hand. Wait for it until you can get a mat on the field. That way you get the most value out of your Gabumon. When you raise this, go into a bond, and you get to just swing 3 times in a row. Next Gabumon we have is our Gabumon from BT1. This is the alt-art version from the store participation for store championships. This is on play, draw 1. Simple as that. He's 1 KDP. He's probably going to die if you swing him into security or get depleted from a few DP depletion decks, but really what you're mainly going for is that extra draw, and he's another Gabumon in name. So if you can't see the best boy right here, you can always go to this one and one of our other Gabumons to get into bond to swing at least twice. Next Gabumon we have is our Dash Pack one. This is one of the new ones. On play, reveal the top 5, add a Tamer from among them. Place the rest on the bottom. This is really good when you're missing your Tamers. I wouldn't play this all the time if you're missing hybrids or you're missing Gabumon himself. I would try to wait until you can have at least some of those if you can avoid playing this right off the bat. But because you only get to grab 1 Tamer, so if you are missing mainly 1 key piece, and you have some of the other pieces in your hand, I think that's the optimal time to play this, because you don't want to lose all of your defensive options for the deck, and you don't want to lose the rest of your bond pieces if you're missing them. The last Gabumon we have is this one right here. This is starter deck Gabumon. Really, he doesn't do much in this deck other than being a Gabumon in name. This is really supposed to be the starter deck Gabumon, the one that gives us plus 1,000 DP when we have 8 or more cards in hand, just like the Demi-Vmon that comes in the starter decks. He gets you a little bit more utility because that one lets you be 15k if you have 8 or more cards in hand when you evolve into bond, and usually you're having 8 or more cards because when you're raising with Matt, you get the extra draw power, which I'll go over in a second. So you probably have the card advantage, but this one does nothing. His inherited is to trash a source of a level 5 or lower. If you're going into bond, you're bouncing those level 5s to their deck anyway, so you're not really worried about that. So replace him for sure when the new starter decks come out with the new Gabumon. Next up for the rest of our rookies, we have 3 Strabimon. You could vouch to run 4 of this because this gives you options to find more of your hybrids. We run quite a few hybrids in this deck. I don't really know what I would want to cut. I like 3. I usually don't see them too much. I feel like if I bumped them up to 4, I wouldn't see them, or I'd see them too often, and then I wouldn't see a Gabumon. If I cut a Gabumon for him, I'd be afraid that my Gabumon count wouldn't be high enough, and then I'd miss out finding that to go into my bonds, because this rookie does nothing for you most of the time other than just search, because it helps you find a tamer and a hybrid. Decent amount of time you're going to go plus off of that. Sometimes you only hit once. Every now and then you hit 0, but he's really good. I don't think I would bump him up to 4. And then our last rookie is Madoki Betamon, 2 copies. All turns, your opponent can't gain memory except with effects. Except with tamer effects. The fact that so many memory boosts are going to be coming out, and even now, I played Security Control in my store championship, and this helped stop the reinforced memory boost from letting them just use their big options for way less memory, and basically memory choking me while still being able to wipe my field. So this is good now, and just gets better once the memory boost for all the colors come out. Next, we're going to go to our champion list. This is mainly hybrids. We have 4 copies of Lobomon and 2 copies of Kendo Garurumon. Lobomon's definitely the go-to most of the time. Digivolve it on top of a tamer for 2, swing. I had it come up when I was playing Security Control. He had 3 security. He passed me with a decent chunk of memory. I had a few ways to increase my memory count. I had 5 tamers on field by this point. He had 3 security. I Digivolved 2 Lobomon and a Kendo and beat him that way. Swung for game, took all 3. He wasn't able to recover any out of those options, and then I raised again and swung for game. It's so explosive. There's no way for them to deal with tamers on your turn just yet, at least not until we get to the Lucemon in the coming sets. So really good. Our other hybrid, of course, is Kendo Garurumon. I run him as a 2 of. This card I didn't think was going to come up near as much, but the ability to bounce Lucemons in Security Control wasn't really the big thing, but I ran into Rookie Rush, and Kendo is the only reason I beat a D-Brigade Yellow Rookie Rush list. Whenever I didn't see him game 1, I hard lost. He had the nuts. He was able to spread board. I wasn't able to deal with it. I didn't see my bonds fast enough, and he just won from there. Second game I saw Kendo, I evolved it on top of a tamer as soon as I could, and he would maybe swing in, and if he lived, it's all right, because Kendo can swing over that rookie and then bounce another rookie back to his hand. He never was able to keep the advantage. Every single time he would try to swing with something or try to keep rookies on the field, I'd go into Kendo and swing. Since he was running the Rookie Rush version, there were very few things that could take me out in security with my Kendo in security, so I was just able to constantly bounce the rookies back to hand. Again, game 3, found Kendo right away. I Digivolved it on top of like a Madoki Betamon or something and just kept on swinging. He wasn't able to keep up with it. Same thing. And then I was able to make a board presence with my rookies before he was able to do anything, because I kept on bouncing half of his rookies back to his hand with Kendo. So Kendo is really good. If you can find the room, or if you want to try it, you could maybe just take out a Lobo and play 3 Kendo and 3 Lobo. After seeing it deal with Rookie Rush, it was really the best option that I had run into. A few more champions we have. We have 3 blockers, Grizzlymon. Not too much to say. 6,000 DP, though, is very key. If you run into Jessmon, Bauhawkmon can blow up 5Ks super easy, so that 6,000 is really good. Being a 5 cost did kind of come up every now and then, because if I didn't have a really good way to deal with a memory or memory choke my opponent with rookies or an Evo or something like that, you can drop this and it doesn't really pass them to too much. If you have a Davis on the field, then you can play this and put him at 2, or if you've gained memory some other way, you can play this, leave your opponent at 1. So it's really good. I wouldn't cut anymore. I ran 1 at one point, and then I ran 2. I didn't see it enough. I always wanted to see this card, because you're going to go down to security very often, and you don't want to die from something like a Salamon raise from Security Control, which is the exact thing that happened to me, or just anything in raising that can come up and swing for game because you don't have security, because you burned it all with bond. This way you have a blocker to deal with that. Last but not least, we have Octomon. This card actually did really well. You Digivolve, he's just a big boy. 7k DP for a level 4 is huge. I think the only thing that really beats him out is Apemon at 8k. We don't have anything like that in blue yet. So this is good to swing over some Digimon. It can even swing over a few ultimates or trade with a few ultimates, which is nice. And it'll live in security a decent amount of the time. One thing I would probably replace this with is once the starter decks come out and we get the blue Cordramon, the fact that he has an on-play ability and he costs a little bit more, but his on-play to draw to is really nice. A little bit lower DP, but if your opponent checks him out of security, then you do get a body on board along with draw, which is really helpful in the mid game if you're kind of struggling or you need to get that last little bit of closure. That extra swing with maybe a Lobo or something is all you need, or even a Bond. So if you wanted to replace it, I'm going to test it out once the starter decks come out, but right now 2 Octomon seems really good. I wouldn't go up any more than that. We only have 2 level 6s. Shocker to some, shouldn't be a shocker to other people who have played Bond lists and have run into the issues of burning all their security. 2 Magnadramon. This card is really good. It helps you recover if you really need it. This is going to go into a ruling I'm going to get to, but I might as well go over it now with Matt. Matt checks for the evolution. At the resolution of the evolution, he checks to see how much security you have. And if you have 0 security at the resolution of this effect when you go into your bond later, then you get to keep the bond, even if you recover. This has gone over in a few things, so you can go evolve into Matt, play Magna, or use Matt, evolve into Bond, go to 0, play Magna, get to keep the Bond after you swing, as long as you have the memory, of course, to play Magna. And that's a lot for somebody to deal with, especially if you went to Bond and cleared out their board, and then now they have a Bond that they have to deal with that can swing next turn 3 times or twice, depending on what source you have, and a Magna to deal with. So not to mention whatever tamers you might have on the field too. So the ability to recover keeps you alive a little bit more if you can really use it. The other effect of this isn't really going to come into play because we don't have any yellow Digimon. But Magna helping you survive and last longer is super helpful. Next up is the big boy himself, 4 Gabumon Bond of Friendship. Big boss monster. When you Digivolve into him, usually you're going to try to go for game or at least clear a board so that you can set up for plays later on. But when attacking, if you have a tamer, you get to unsuspend it. So he swings, you unsuspend it. If you have this Gabumon from BT6, you go on top of him, Digivolve, swing, restand for this effect, swing, restand for Gabumon's effect, swing again. So 3 effective swings. It's really hard to deal with, and you have the passive removal, as I like to kind of call it, where you don't have to think about it. As long as they don't have any level 6s, the board's clear. If they have any level 6s, you can use one of those swings to kill it if it's unsuspended or if it's suspended. But it's just a really good way to clear the board, bounce level 5s to the bottom of the deck. They don't even go back to the hand, so they're pretty much gone for the game. And then he's a big 14k. If you have the starter deck Gabumon, this does bring him up to 15k if you have the card advantage in hand. And then if you use that Demi-Vemon, it brings you up over to 16, which gets over pretty much everything in security that you can run into. It even lets you survive a Wyvern's Breath. So I think it might be worth playing it as a one of, but Upamon just seems so good right now. But that 16k could kind of come up, but there are a few cards where it doesn't matter, and if you just hit it in security, you're gonna die anyway. So that's it for the bonds. Next on, we go to our tamers and our options. We're gonna have 4 Matt Ashita, and we're gonna have 3 Davis Motomiya. Matt, of course, like I said, he's the big combo piece. When you raise a Gabumon, you get to draw a card and gain a memory. This not only helps if you need to get a little bit extra memory to, like, let's say, go into a bond and then be able to play a Magna right afterwards, because you'll be at 4 memory if you have a Davis on the field, or just get to that 3 memory so you can go into a bond. And then you also get the card advantage, so it helps activate some of those card effects like the starter deck Gabumon and starter deck Demi-Vemon. Other than that, of course, his main ability, trash 2. If you can Digivolve one of your Gabumon, trashing 2 of your security to go into a bond of friendship. And then, like I said, if you're at 1 or more cards, security cards, you delete the bond at the end of your turn. But this checks on resolution of the effect. So if you're at 0 security, go into your bond, then you can recover. And since you were at 0 on resolution of the effect, you get to keep the bond. So not only now does your opponent have to deal with, let's say, a bond, but you've recovered with Magna, now they have to deal with 2 extra security, which could have some of your options, and you have to deal with the Magna and the Bond that can swing a bunch next turn. So Matt, of course, main combo piece. And then you have Davis. He's another one of our searchers, like the Gabumon, except he helps us find the Digimon that we're missing. Let's say we're missing a Gabumon, or we're missing a Lobomon, or some other combo piece that we really need. He helps us find that. He's one of the few ways we can actually get this Gabumon off of a search until we get the memory boosts, which I'll go over what I will put in for those or switch with those. But he's just really good. You're never going to find a green Digimon in this deck list, but being a memory tamer and getting to search one is already good enough. Last but not least, we have our options. We're going to run 4 Hammer Spark, 2 Cocytus Breath, 1 Rattlestar, and 1 Howling Memory Boost. So one-ofs are a little weird. I know not everybody likes them, but they always come up when they need to come up. 4 Hammer Spark, of course, it's just free memory. Check it out as security. You get to gain 2 memory. It can really cut your opponent's turn short, or it can keep them from doing certain plays that they wanted to do. So 4 memory, or 4 of those is a must right now. Then you have the Howling Memory Boost. The trashing of the sources isn't really big. It came up every now and then where I would need to stop something from attacking or blocking, but most of the time I didn't have to worry about blockers because I was going to go into a bond anyway. And unless he were running like black blockers or something like that, which I didn't encounter, I'm going to bounce it, spin it to the bottom of the deck anyway. So really, this is just a memory boost in name. That's most of what I wanted it for. When the new starter decks come out, I would definitely say replace this and maybe go like this with 3 Hammer Sparks, because it's still really good to have, but then put in 2 of blue memory boost. That way you can find more of your pieces and you still get the extra memory boost. You could try to find room for this, but the deck list is already really tight in my opinion. So I would leave it, I would do these 2 for a blue memory boost, and I think that would see good results. I'll have to test it when we get the starter decks at the end of the week. And then last but not least, we have our big removal spells, Cocytus Breath and Rattlestar. Cocytus Breath was the big helper when I was playing against security control. Whenever you see a Zwart come out of security, it's hard to deal with in this deck list, but Cocytus Breath puts it back in their hand and basically makes it dead depending on what they've put in their list. If they don't run enough black or purple level 6s, then he never comes back and they have to hard play him. Or if he does come back, you just bounce him back to the hand, and again, they have to hard play him. So Cocytus Breath is just really good. Rattlestar is lackluster in some situations, but a godly card in other situations. Just being able, if they have 3 or more Digimon, to send one to the bottom of the deck is very good in the situations where it comes up. Most of the time, I feel like being able to just put a level 5 back to the hand doesn't really do much, but being able to send it to the bottom of the deck with that other effect is really helpful. You could definitely do this and replace it with another Cocytus Breath. I don't see any issues with that. That might even be better. But when it came up and I needed to tuck something to the bottom, Rattlestar was there. Another good thing to maybe change this with is with the new option card that comes out in the starter decks that bounces a level 6 back to hand for only 6 cost. Again, it kind of limits you, whereas Cocytus Breath doesn't, but being able to just easily bounce something back to the hand for a little less memory is also good, because if they have a memory tamer, you're at 3, you just bounce that back, you pass them over to 3 anyway. So I still like the 1 Rattlestar, but if you want to run the 3 Cocytus, it's perfectly understandable. It's well worth it. So that is pretty much the deck list. Most of the matchups that I ran into when I played this is my store championship list. I didn't mention that at the start of the video, but this was the list that I won my store championship this weekend with. Everything came up just like when I wanted to see it. Very few times where the matchup's not really in my favor. Good security is the thing that kills this deck. I ran into security control my first round, and if he had the nuts in security and killed my bond, then that was on me. But as long as I could keep the pressure up, swinging in with little dudes, even if he tries to recover and just try to go for a big bond push, as long as you have the tamers and you hold on to your hybrids in hand, then it really, they can't do as much as if they pass you a bunch of memory, they have to deal with a bunch of hybrids. So it's kind of a give or take on their end. If the security's good and they recover a whole bunch and then they have good removal spells, then that's another thing. So that was probably my worst matchup, but I was able to pull it through because of the hybrids. Like I said, I swung for 4 security at one point with Lobomon. and Kendo. So I was able to clear it out that way. The other matchups I had Rookie Rush. Kendo was the only thing that saved me in that list. Just, he's so oppressive for Rookie Rush, they can't do anything. You just constantly throw stuff back to their hand. They have to try to get over it with something like a Tankmon and trade, but most of the time, just if they don't see it fast enough, then you just keep the board clear. The last matchup I saw was a Hexablow matchup. That one wasn't really the best. He kind of bricked, and he had to hard play Hex. And when they hard play Hex, you bounce it back with Kakaida's Breath. And if they try to flood the board, you bounce the 5s back with Rattlestar. Or if he floods board and then hard plays a Hex, you tuck the Hex again. And there wasn't anything you could really do, unfortunately. It's just able to go Bond, swing 3 checks, Bond, go Burr most of the time. So deck list is really solid as is. Like I said, there's a few things you could change when the new starter decks come around, but I think this is definitely going to be a top 10 contender. It finally got me my invite, so I'll see you guys at Nats if any of you are going to Nationals. We'll see what format we're in then. We could still be in BT6 format. We might actually finally be able to move on to EX01 and BT7 list. So, well, guys, thank you very much for watching till the end. We're going to hopefully try to get some more deck lists on here as we practice and see what's really interesting and what feels good in the meta. And then with the starter decks coming out, I'm definitely going to have more deck lists. Hopefully get a few matches up on here soon. I'm going to go record some matches at my locals today, hopefully. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, stay frosty.